So I'm in Tokyo right now. Last Friday, I went to the Capybara Cafe. This Capybara Cafe, let me preface this by saying you can't just go and like drop in. Why? Because capybaras are insanely popular. So the culture around Capybara right now is such that you have to book 2 weeks in advance. You have to book at midnight 2 weeks in advance. We set an
Wow.
at midnight Japan time. We were like, okay, we have to go through it now. Like the site was ready to go. We like went through the whole process. 3 minutes after that, we refreshed. It took 3 minutes. We refreshed. No slots available. No slots available at all. Off season, But
Wow.
this is how popular capybara cafes are. And so they're super well known for being like very chill and very soothing. And so that's really like the aspect that has kind of like gone viral in the last couple of years and they're just very like calm, like their vibe is just like nothing phases them. They're very chill. And I think it's this very like millennial Gen Z thing where they strive to like have that attitude and just like, you know what? I'm going to deal with it like a capybara. I'm not going to deal with it like a raccoon, which is like chaotic. I'm going to be a capybara. Everything's fine. Everything's okay. We'll deal with it. Yeah, I think it's really fun how, we're building this whole thing, like the whole like meme culture around certain animals. Like, the Thai baby hippo is going crazy
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
it's
that
great.
is fun.
Like it's such a fun, like imaginary thing that we're doing together as like an internet society.
I'd like to hear just a little bit about your background and like how'd you get to, what led you to where you are now? Just in short.
Where I am
Yeah.
for
The head of a capybara empire.
I do a couple of things. One thing is I built an AI headshot generator called the Multiverse AI. We launched that last year. We started from like zero in April. We generally get about 30,000 US revenue a month now. We're like a team of 3. So that's like my main thing. And then I think because, all the hype around AI, my background as a marketer, I used to work for like big tech brands like OnePlus. I also worked for a startup accelerator for the European Union Chamber of Commerce, where I was also on tech a lot. And I think I've always just been fascinated by this with like GPT and image generators coming out. We started building Multiverse and that did really well. And I think it really shows me like how much is possible with AI, like not just in like super, serious like business applications, not only like enterprise, but also in like lighthearted things like Capybara Affirmations AI. And so that's everything that I do. I built that in August using Pickaxe. And in the first like day of launch, it did really, really well because it got into Marginal Revolution, which is this huge blog. It got a like exclusive interview in like Digital Trends, which is like a huge tier 1 media. It has like 6,000 users, and every day there are still like signups, people finding Capybara Affirmations AI. You generate like an image of a capybara affirmation that is like exclusive to you. So it's like an image of a capybara that says like, you're doing great, or like, you're doing your best is good enough. So it's very like positive. And so, you're asking like, how did you get there? For me, I was really interested in, okay, how can I build, how can I like quickly MVP an AI app that I would actually use, that I think is like really fun, and also that helps me improve my skill set a little bit in terms of building these things. And so, there's all this hype around code generators, like, oh, use Bolt, use like Cursor, use this, use that. But, as a non-coding person, it's still really difficult. Like coding is one thing, developing is another, deploying is another. And so as a, non-technical, or like technical savvy but non-technical person, there's this huge like gray area between, okay, I now know how to use AI to do this, but I don't know how to go zero all the way to actual deployment and actual monetization. And so I think Pickaxe was amazing for that, because I looked at a couple of different no-code creators. There's so many. There's like Flutterflow. I use Framer for websites. I can think of like 10 others that do something similar, but that are not as easy, I think, as Pickaxe. And so that's really what I was like, oh my God, I can actually create something from scratch and deploy it within 2 or 3 hours, and it just works. And that is so rare. And so I think with like a whole new generation of things like coming up now in terms of like no code, we're seeing this like convergence of developers actually using things like AI, or actually using things like no code to make their own things, and they can go way more in depth because people are now getting into the mindset of, okay, I want to build something, but I want to MVP something first before I actually dedicate 60 hours to building like the perfect platform. And I think that mindset with like bootstrap startups, with like huge Twitter influencers, specifically in AI, is really taking hold. And I think the like new generation of tools are much more oriented towards not just servicing enterprise, but also servicing bootstrap founders, solo founders. And that's such an interesting place to be. And I really want to be one of those solo founders taking advantage of that. But as a non-coder, like non-developer, we kind of have to use what is possible for us. And, that's where tools like Pickaxe really come in. So I am a little marketer who knows a little bit of no code and like tries her best with that. And I think Capybara Affirmations AI was like a huge proof of concept for saying you can build something immediately within like a day, or like a week, because it really didn't take me that much time, and then deploy it. And if you do the PR and the marketing right, users will come. And we do have 6,000. I mean, I do have 6,000 plus users now, which is like kind of crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. What would you tell someone that approached you and like asked, they knew nothing about AI, nothing about no code or anything, like if they asked for advice about how to get started with something like this, where would you point to start?
Yeah. I would really say, I think it's much more of a mindset challenge than it is like an actual challenge. And I think the thing that I've struggled the most with is being comfortable being super dumb. Like, the thing is that you are not actually learning until you feel stupid doing the thing. And so most of the time people are like, wow, Tanya, like you've built these things, like you have so many users, you're doing so much revenue, blah, blah. But I will tell you, most of the time I feel so stupid because I am doing things I don't know how to do. When you do that consistently, you just end up feeling really dumb all the time. But you have to remember that like you actually started here and now you are here. And throughout all this time, you felt stupid, but you actually learned all of those things as well. And so really take note of that progress, and remind yourself of all the things that you have learned, because otherwise it's very demotivating. So I have things like I keep a builder journal, which is where I note down like all the things that I've done or that I learned, all the tools that I've used. I think the worst thing you can do is like to do nothing. I would say secondly, the worst thing you can do is to do nothing. And so there are so many tools that you can learn. Pickaxe is one of them. I have some favorites. Other people have different favorites. I would say spend like a day using one, another day using another. Try to have a mindset that it's like, I want to have something released within like a month. You totally can do that. The thing blocking you is like perfectionism. It always is.
Yeah.
It's like, just release it. Nobody cares about your launch day. Nobody's watching you, because like for me especially, it feels like, oh, if I do something, I have like 10,000 followers on like LinkedIn. Don't I owe it to them to be like the expert before I say anything? And actually, because you're in that journey, as I say, like, the first thing is you feel so dumb all the time. So you never feel like you really know anything, but actually you do know a lot. And so take that, embrace your cringe, and
embrace the cringe.
and say it with like all the disclaimers that you want. I'm not a developer. I am not this. I am not that. I've only been doing this for like a year and a half. I was working full time still last year in April, but that's not me right now. So if people have questions, I'm always super happy to answer them. But I will happily admit that I'm definitely not an expert. And like when you are a generalist, it just feels like you don't know that much of anything at all. But it's a great situation to be in, because I think, you know, if you are wanting to learn and you have the luxury of time to learn, take 100% advantage of that. Feel stupid, just launch the thing, take 30 days, don't take more, and try to, you know, really just like learn as much as possible, because you can never do wrong with that. That is always a transferable skill that you do anything else, especially if you're a founder. And so, you know, if you want like a concrete action plan, I would say try to build something silly, you know, to begin with, because you want to set yourself up for having a specific deliverable. As soon as you are wanting to add features, stop. Put it on a list somewhere so you don't forget, but don't build it, because you will be super overwhelmed. And in the end, nobody maybe wants it. So just, you know, launch anything. Tell your mom, tell your dad, they'll be really happy about it.
Yeah. So in this new like era of like AI tooling and AI creativity, what do you think are the like going to be the most valuable skills going forward for people to know?
I think in terms of like skill set, you know, everything will be changing so fast, so much. So I think we have to kind of go into it with a mindset of there will be no, you know, there will be no long-term stabilizers, right? So really your winning factor is how adaptable are you? How flexible can you be? Um, in terms of like other skill sets, I would say, yeah, it's really a lot about learning, first of all. And then second of all, I think if you want to be a founder, you want to build a product, focus on marketing, because marketing is really, really important. You know, there are so many developers who spend like 6-7 months building something, maybe even longer. But when you launch, nobody's actually going to see it, right? And so it's really about like, what is your distribution strategy? I think so many people are like, oh, but like PG Paul Graham says, if you build it, they will come, blah, blah. It's not like that. You know, it's like Silicon Valley of like, if you build it, they will come. That used to be a real thing. It's not a real thing anymore, right? It doesn't matter what you build. If I don't see it on like my Instagram reels or my explore page or when I'm walking around, it's probably not really going to be a thing, you know. And especially now, I think with like if you're building something for other developers or for other like solo founders, some of them are very built in public. A lot of them like to gatekeep as well, right? So with some tools, people love to just not share anything at all. So unless you're really like targeting creators who are incentivized to share, who, you know, are running your affiliate or whatever, it's really, really hard to grow. And so with Multiverse, for example, like we were super lucky because on one hand, people love sharing like we are AI first. I have an AI headshot. But then on the other, the whole point of an AI headshot is that nobody sees that it's AI, right? So people don't generally want to share that much. Having like something viral built in is super, super helpful for your product, and it's something that I would always recommend. But yeah, to go back to your question, I think, you know, a learning mindset and then the marketing first mindset is super, super important to actually make something that is successful. Otherwise, you're just building for yourself, which is totally fine. But if you don't have, you know, a PR strategy, an SEO strategy, a GPT, and anything kind of strategy, influencer strategy, you will bump into a wall and it'll be really hard because it's very demotivating to build something that nobody's using or that you are not able to monetize off of.
Yeah. And then just to build off that, how do you see AI and AI tools changing the, you know, the marketing landscape and the marketing strategies of the, you know, next 5 years? How is it going to change?
I think
Like,
it's already,
you get into content or social media or anything, you know, how do you think it's changing?
So I'm not a big fan of like the traditional social media marketing strategy. And what I mean with that is like having your Instagram account and then, you know, people like post updates and stuff like that. Because ultimately that's a landing page, no? Like, or it's an email newsletter. Like in that case, there's not that much difference. And you are competing with like 500 other people that the person is also following. It's not like an email even, because not everything gets delivered. So that's really, really tough. That's like a landing page thing. On the other hand, if you're able to, get influencers on board, create short videos, stuff like that, that could be amazing. But it's a huge time spent. Like video content creation, long time, unless you're already familiar with it. So I think that's really difficult. I think in terms of like, some of the biggest impact of like AI on marketing, for me, because SEO for me is like it's like basically my bread and butter. Like that's like the major part of how I have like grown Multiverse, as SEO and PR. So I think in terms of SEO, there's a huge amount of like changes, like all the people using AI content creation, AI writers, there's Jaspers, there's Copy AI, there's Writer, like there's just so many different products right now. Even just people using GPT in like the right way to like create anything. I think it works really well for some things, and it will continue to improve. Right now, it's still relatively easy to tell that something's like AI generated, but in like 6 months, a year from now, probably won't be. So huge impact. I would say for like reels and stuff like that, it's gonna start. The whole like automatic brain rot type content has become really popular. It's just like a text, like the guy playing like Minecraft or something on top of that. Works really well with like Gen Z. I don't know. I don't necessarily, it's not my type of content. But I think we can definitely start to like look out for content creators who do a lot of like AI video where they like cloning themselves. That's already really popular in some places. In China, they do it a lot for like live streams. So I think we can definitely expect to see that. The landscape becomes more competitive. The landscape becomes a lot more competitive in a lot of different ways. And so generally, though, the rule of like what we'll see is that when this like easy, low-hanging fruit content becomes so easy to create, like the brain rot content, something else generally takes off. So within SEO, for example, Google has gone through lengths to really penalize people who are using AI generated content. They did this huge update. It's called a core update this year in April. And a lot of people lost their rankings. And so focus super hard on making sure that something is like actually created by a person. And so when you are creating writing something as a person right now, you are getting a huge bump because actually you're better than like 95% of content out there because they write like AI. So there's a pro and a con to everything, but I would say in general, it always becomes more competitive, and it's really about trying to stay on the cutting edge. Some people find that gimmicky, but an Instagram account used to be gimmicky 10 years ago. So no, try and be a little bit more original and authentic with stuff.
Yeah. And then when it comes to, creativity and AI generally, there's a lot of controversy and a lot of people with opinions about that. What do you think people get wrong the most about like trying to be creative with AI?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's so many different takes on this, especially when it comes to IP and imaging IP and stuff like that. I think some of the coolest kind of transition that I've seen is that, take Adobe Photoshop. They went from basically wanting to sue OpenAI for, using all of that to basically using image generators to make Photoshop like 100x better product. And so what that tells me is that and like their audience of course like loves it, right? Like initially artists were like, oh, this is terrible, what about all of the work that's been done, and like how can we credit that, right? Which is a super bold claim, but that has changed completely now in like the last year. Like that discourse has really gone from I hate it to look at all the things that I can create with it. And so I think that's such an interesting value proposition because a lot of new technologies, they really, in my opinion, for like 95% of like people, they really democratize so much, right? Solo founders are now able to do so much more in terms of like asset creation, least of all through amazing apps like Canva, where
Mhm.
like templating and stuff like that, as well as AI now. And so I would say that if you're able to use those things, you're doing so well, because 80% of people, 90% of people are still not using that to like 100% the extent, and the thing standing between them and like actually learning is experimenting with it and being uncomfortable. And so that really doesn't take longer than like a day. You can learn AI in like less than a day if you're like, how do I say it, if you feel okay being stupid. Because that's really like
Yeah,
like
that
if
is
you're
it.
raise a good question in GPT, able to be specific and communicate well, I think there's a huge upside. And so I love watching people use GPT, because I think it tells me so much about how good or bad of a communicator they are. Like, are you clear
Yeah,
enough in questions?
right.
And how does that translate actually to you talking to regular people? Because I think actually I've become a better communicator because of GPT. I'm able to understand that if I don't give somebody context, they don't know. And second of all, I think I've become braver in my questions, because now when I ask a question, if I ask GPT a question, 100% they're going to answer something thoughtful. That's not a real
Mhm.
life scenario. You don't always get that from real people. Whereas like if
Mhm.
I ask GPT, it's always going to give me a thoughtful, well backed answer, even if it's totally wrong.
Yeah. No, I like to say that like working with AI, generative AI, is full of like happy accidents where, I mean, a lot of times you'll get like cliche after cliche, but then occasionally you'll get something, mostly because you put in some effort into the prompt to make that a little, at an angle or something, and then out comes like something very unexpected, especially with the image generators. But in the video, I've been playing a lot with me and Mike got access to the Sora Alpha program. Maybe I'm not supposed to say that on like this recording. Anyway, but it's so fun to just play with the videos, like playing with dreams or something. Um, but anyway, on that, I won't ramble. But is there something like what in your time working with AI, or or just in your entrepreneurial career generally, your like solo entrepreneur career, is what's like an unexpected thing that's happened, or an unexpected lesson that you've learned where you're just like, huh, that was like really different than what I thought.
Um, I mean, I guess a lot of things. Honestly,
Hmm.
most. I would say one thing is that I think once you like start selling things online, you don't have a sense at all of the amount of people who want to buy from you. A super weird thing that happens when, so I get a notification. Sorry, let me back this up. Like, I get a notification for every sale that happens on Multiverse, or every time somebody signs up for Capybara affirmations, right?
Hmm.
Every time I'm so shocked. Like, how did this person in like New Zealand or something find me?
Hmm.
How is like possible? Like, how is it possible that you reach so many people? And then on LinkedIn, there's people sending like DMs for like partnerships or anything like that. And I think it's really this power of, if you open yourself up, if you build something, you have no idea the amount of people that it could impact, right? And
Hmm.
I like to think of like Capybara affirmations, for example, as like, it's this, I don't really make that much money off of it. Like, I think it's generated maybe like $300 or something, which is kind
Yeah.
of crazy. But it just exists out there to like make people happy and like brighten their
Hmm.
day, which is so worthwhile, in
Hmm.
itself. And I can go through the back end and I see like, oh, people are like, generating really cute images for themselves or like for their friends. Like once
Hmm.
in a month, there's somebody who like generates like 10 different images, all for like a different name. And I assume that it's like a coworker or a friend. And I can only
Hmm.
imagine how happy it must make this person when they receive that. And that's so nice because I made that happen, and
Hmm.
it's just like you have so much more impact, you know, like I've impacted more than like 15,000 people now with like products that I've built. And that's
Mhm.
super cool. And so I think it's this thing where, you know, initially you're like selling to like your friends and family, but then over time, the world is just so big and you have absolutely no idea the like magical things that can happen once you like are, you know, embracing stupidity and like making
Mhm.
products and just shipping them.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So yeah, I would say you have absolutely no idea the amount of people who are buying and also ship things and like put it out there. You know, you really have no idea. My parents love to ask me like, who's buying these AI headshots? I'm like, I don't know, but it's out there. You know, I have no idea who they are. Like I
Right.
kind of know, but you know, I don't know them like personally. And I think there's
Hmm.
this idea of like, how can you sell to somebody you don't actually know? But you can when you build a SaaS.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. I'm always amazed at the diversity of people that use Pickaxe. It's like it's kind of insane. But we actually talk to them quite a bit. Probably too
I would
much.
talk to them
Um,
too, not like every single one. And it's
right.
like,
No, no, yeah, not everyone. No.
but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Uh, um, okay, what else? Um, okay, yeah, what sort of trends in AI or tech generally do you see happening that you want to that could influence your next project? And like what's on the horizon for you?
Mm,
Or
I'm
what do you
trying.
really want to or what do you really want to play with? Like what do you want to be like, oh, I want to experiment with that. But maybe it's not quite there yet, or maybe you haven't yet.
I think that there is still a huge amount of um, I think there's two main things. I think first of all, imaging. I think
Hmm.
imaging and video, I'll add it in, are some of the most like magical applications of AI. The reason for that being, you know, with text, with like LLMs, you can kind of imagine somebody doing this kind of work who's like not super skilled. You know, the whole thing with if a monkey, you know, types, like they could still accidentally write a novel.
Hmm.
It's possible for regular people like me to create any kind of like LLM. So to say anything that an LLM does, but with imaging, that cost is much higher, right? So I'll take capybara affirmations as an example. It's impossible for me to create an image like capybara affirmations, no matter how
Yeah.
much work I put into it. I couldn't draw, I couldn't create that
Hmm.
image, I couldn't illustrate that. It's just impossible, right? So I think the opportunity with like imaging and with video is actually so much higher than with text. Also because with imaging and video, you generally get a lot more leeway, right? So you generate like 100 at the same time and you can scan 100 at the same time. Whereas with LLMs, you can't create 100 different results and then scan 100 different results at the same time. That's just not how
Hmm.
it works. And so that's, I think there's a lot of interest, there's a lot of opportunity there in terms of like imaging and with video. I think also though, with there's still so many there's still so many applications that we don't even really know the extent of, even though you know people are building so much all the time. And I think the opportunities like way more with integrating like interesting APIs than it does with just creating a wrapper, right? So I think that's
Hmm.
also something that like Pickaxe implemented actions.
Hmm.
I haven't played around with it enough yet. The things that I've
Hmm.
seen super interesting. But yeah, it's really about like how do you create that like full scale, more exclusive or more original approach and make it so people can just generate it with GPT, right? Because that's like the general like benchmark. Like, can I make this with ChatGPT because it has such a high penetration rate, right? It's like 80-90%. So it's like, what's
Hmm.
your actual like value add? Will it be community based, something that has like super high retention with community? Will it be a different implementation? Will it be imaging, which is not GPT? I mean, DALI works generally really well, but you know, there's so
Hmm.
many like imaging models that are way better. GPT cannot create an AI headshot. It's just not a thing. So it's like, what is a custom thing that you are building on top of that that gets it from like that 70% to that 95%? I think there's so much opportunity there. And so, yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to explore that. So I would say imaging and video first. And then second, implementation. Like, how can you really integrate something with something else to create an exceptional experience for users?
Mhm.
Which is a lot, I think, harder than it actually sounds. But yeah.
Yeah, no, as you said, it's like, you know, the tools will get better, but the bar will get higher,
Yeah.
basically. It's gonna get more competitive, you know, if anyone can make an image now, it's like, well, it's not about the image anymore. It's about what are you doing with that? Like what's the concept that you're layering on top of it that makes it more compelling or more clever or more unique? Um,
Well, it's
and yeah, sorry?
that in marketing,
That
unfortunately.
and
Like I,
right.
I I have to remind myself a lot of the time, like I'm building Butter SEO.ai, which is essentially, it's a little bit of AI, but it's a lot of SEO. So it's specifically geared towards people who are starting businesses and who need specific custom keywords that they can target. So let's say you're already creating content and you see that, oh, your content only performs for like the first 5 days and then it kind of goes into nothing. But you're handwriting everything, you're putting a lot of effort. And so you're basically losing out on so much potential users by not optimizing for SEO, because that's still huge, right? Like you can easily get like 20,000 users to your website just by organic traffic if you actually use SEO and Google correctly. And so Butter SEO gives you those keywords for your website. It's like a one-time fee. Maybe I will add in like a subscription, but really this is about how can you get traffic. And so that's super low AI. It's still some AI, but it's very low AI. And I would say that, it's a very niche thing to do. But I think there's so much value in people literally just learning how to market their own products. And if you have 50,000 users, you have 50,000 users. It doesn't matter if another product is better than yours. Users do not stumble upon a random product. They don't. Most users, for their user journey, it's really either they're Googling something, they see something on Reels, or it's word of mouth. And even word of mouth is like, for enterprise tools, is quite difficult because people don't
Yeah.
generally talk about, what is your stack, like what thing are you using? And again, if you are somebody like me, if you're somebody like me and you're creating like keyword lists that help businesses 10x their audience, you're not going to share that with anybody else. You're not going to be like, hey, competitor, I'm posting on LinkedIn about this thing that like helped me get way more users. No, you totally don't do that. So it's like in your advantage to keep that on lock and not tell anybody else. So how are you marketing yourself as a product that actually wants to be gate kept because you're such a valuable secret?
Yeah. No, that's a good point. We need to be better at marketing. Honestly, we don't. Um, yeah, we don't know how to do that really. I mean, we're figuring it out.
I think if you're developers, like there's always this thing between like developers and marketers where I feel like we want each other's like thing, and like we don't, it's like such a different perspective because on one hand it's like, wait, won't they just use it? And then the other hand, it's like, I don't understand how anybody will ever find us.
Yeah.
So I think there's both are right, but it's really about like working hand in hand and like working together to do stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Um, mhm. So if you were running Pickaxe, how would you change?
Transparent. Okay, let me tell you what I would do. I'll give you some stuff. So there's a huge no code community out there.
Uh-huh.
It's massive. Maybe massive is the right word, but they're very dedicated.
Right.
They're very dedicated to like, building and monetizing and being like founders of stuff. And so I think Pickaxe totally fits into this new category that has maybe like come up in the last 20 years, where people want to start a business and they don't know how because they don't have the skill set to do it. I think Shopify is part of that. Substack is part of it. podcasting is part of it. And so it's a huge audience, and it's a community-based audience to a really strong extent, which is huge
Yeah.
pros, huge cons, right? I think one of the huge pros is that they're kind of easy to find. So go and like, I can send you some names of like newsletters that are very top in like the no code scene, or even like influencers who are like very popular in that, who generally, in great news for you, they don't have any money. No money, So if you say like, I'm gonna give you $100, can you make this video for me, or can you incorporate my product in this, or like, will you review it? Anything, they will say, oh my God, thank you so much. I would love to take your $100, and I will create content with it. That's really valuable. That's the best kind of audience, because the like top people working in it are really dedicated, super passionate, really smart, but they have no funds. And so I think that's really something where there's a lot of strong relationships that you can build in that scene, especially if you are like Pickaxe and you're willing to get on a phone, get on a call with them, have like a private onboarding, stuff like that. So I would say a lot of it is like relationship building, and really taking advantage of setting up that space, right? Because that's a really like specific niche that has its own subreddits, that has its own Discord channels, its own Slacks, its own challenges, its own Twitter. So I'd say that's first, and then second, it's I love the content that you guys are creating on YouTube, by the way. Like, I've been watching a lot because like a lot of the time they will pop up on like very specific SEO, right? So I think the more content that you guys create that is like SEO friendly, the better, because that's really the entry point for a lot of people who are building, is like, how can I integrate this with this with this, this with this? And so you can really go in on like programmatic SEO and create 1,000 landing pages that answer that specific question. And I would highly suggest to do that, because you have so many potential applications. And so those templates really matter. One of the first pages that people go to on any like landing page for no code is templates, because these are really basic users like me. I don't know how to build anything. You have to tell me what I can build. So templating, programmatic SEO, tapping into community, sponsoring newsletters. And so another thing to like the point of community is that that community is so happy when you pour in any kind of funds, because it's a generally really underfunded community. And it's really too bad, because there's some amazing creators in that space who are super helpful, super supportive, who do things for nothing, basically. They just need the community. And so I think, any kind of support there is always super appreciated. There's also bigger YouTube creators who are, in the no code, or, essentially like how to become a founder, how to become a successful founder scene. And I think they would also be really open for partnerships. And I think you would get a lot of like validation from having that as well, because something that really matters in that community is support. Support from the actual tool itself and from the people leading it. And so when you position yourself as being accessible, there's a huge community around you where other people can ask for support, like your own Discord community, stuff like that, that is like kind of active, not through any effort of you, but through people who are just building in it. I think that's really helpful. So I would suggest doing stuff like that, which is like, I think relatively, it's like still super low hanging fruit. And then there's a lot of other stuff that you can do with like influencers and, short content creation, even going like viral first content creation, like honestly just making like the dumbest apps that you can think of. Making that as easy as possible to, make like 10 videos in an hour. How could you do that?